If you're a manager, chances are you're stuck in the middle right now. Pressure from the top, needs from your team. Too much structure, and people shut down. Too much flexibility, and results slip. So, how do you lead when both sides matter and both are watching? That's the real work of leadership. And that's the conversation we're having today on the Blanchard LeaderChat podcast. Leadership today comes with competing priorities that don't go away as you move up, they intensify. Today, we're talking with Debbie Young, president of Blanchard, about what it feels like to lead at a senior level while balancing results, people, and constant change. Debbie, welcome to the Blanchard Leader Chat podcast.
Thanks, Chad. It's great to be here.
It's so good to hear from you. And you know, we're really focusing on balancing tensions. And so, in your role, which competing priorities keep you up most at night as a senior leader?
That's a great question, Chad. I think what keeps me up isn't just about what we're trying to accomplish, it's how we do it. I feel a really deep responsibility to deliver results while also taking care of the people who are doing the work. And so that tension doesn't go away at senior levels. It actually gets louder. There's also the reality that our customers and the market aren't slowing down, and expectations are rising, change is constant, and leaders are feeling that pressure to keep pace. So the tension becomes, how do we move fast enough to stay relevant without losing our people or our culture along the way? And, Chad, this isn't just personal experience. We see it clearly in our research. In our 2026 HR and L&D trend survey, 40% of organizations cite dissatisfaction with leadership quality as a top driver of retention challenges, and 47% cite burnout and workload issues as major contributors to turnover. So that tells me the role of the leader really matters, especially in moments of pressure.
Where do you find you're being pulled in different directions the most in your role?
I have to say, particularly in the last couple of years, I really feel pulled most often between the urgency of moving the organization forward and the responsibility for the people. There's this constant pressure to deliver results, adapt quickly, keep pace with the change, especially with all this disruption happening, but also slowing down enough to really listen to our colleagues and make sure that we're not leaving people behind. And I think I've just finally come to accept that feeling that pull isn't something to fix. It's actually a signal that the work of leadership is happening. It requires intentional choices that are grounded in both clarity and care.
And as I was thinking about this conversation with you, I was thinking one of the most fundamental tensions in leadership is holding people accountable while also genuinely caring about them, especially during times of change. How have you learned to balance accountability for results while also demonstrating that you care about your people? That's got to be tough sometimes.
It really is. Early in my career, I thought caring about people meant being really understanding. And I thought accountability meant being tough. And over time, I've learned that that separation is false. The best leaders don't choose between people and results. They hold both, and they hold both simultaneously. At Blanchard, we often say that leadership is the multiplier. Leadership amplifies stress or resilience, disengagement or performance. And our research shows that when leaders lean too far into results without empathy, then burnout rises. But when leaders lead with care without clarity, performance suffers. So, what's really helped me in reframing accountability is really reframing accountability as an act of care, clear expectations, honest feedback, and follow through actually creating safety, both, especially psychological safety. People want to know where they stand. And when leaders combine high expectations and high results, teams perform better and they feel better doing it.
So since we're talking about leadership tensions, and one tension that leaders often struggle with is when to give clear direction versus when to step back and let leaders grow into the challenge. In your role, how big of a struggle is this for leaders? Does it change at different levels of leadership?
Well, this is a huge struggle for leaders, and especially given the time that we are operating today when there is so much change and so much disruption. And yes, it changes depending on the person, the situation, and the level of leadership. And this is really where SL2 becomes incredibly practical. It reminds leaders that there isn't one right style. There's a responsive style, and leaders have to read what their people need right at that moment in time. So when people need clarity or confidence, leaders need to be more directive. When people need ownership or growth, leaders need to be more supportive. When the stakes are high, the focus has to be on performance. And then when growth matters, we really have to like slow down and develop. And so that tension doesn't disappear. You manage it through intentional choices. And leaders who struggle most are often trying to apply one style universally. The best leaders flex their leadership style.
I feel like I've been saying this for years on the podcast, but the level of change right now is just unprecedented.
Mm.
And, leaders and organizations need people to be able to move quickly. But at the same time, it's true that not everyone is as adaptable or agile as we need them to be. So how how do you balance the pressure to move quickly with the need to help people understand what's changing, why it's changing, and how do you bring people along, and help them make sense of the change and also go at pace?
Yeah, this is probably the defining tension of leadership right now. As you said, the pace of change is relentless, and humans don't change at the speed of strategy decks, right? Our research shows that supporting change and agility is one of the top organizational challenges as we've begun 2026. And leaders are being asked to move fast and bring people along, and that's hard. What I've learned is that speed without sense making creates resistance. Leaders have to slow down just enough to help people understand the why, even when the what is moving quickly. And so, this is where communication, empathy, and visibility really matter. Leaders don't need to have all the answers, but they do need to be present. They have to be transparent. They have to be authentic and they have to be consistent. So, helping people make meaning of change builds trust, and trust then accelerates execution.
When you think about these tensions, what actually, in your mind, actually helps leaders navigate them better over time?
It's really important to equip leaders with practical frameworks and tools that can help them feel confident as they address all of the expectations that are being placed on them because it's not, an either or proposition. At Blanchard, we like to, really ready our leaders in a way that allows them to read what their people need and respond accordingly. And so models like SL2 gives leaders a way to pause, gives them a way to assess what their people need, and then respond with intentionality. We also emphasize a coaching mindset. Coaching helps leaders step out of reaction mode and step into reflection. A coach helps leaders sort through competing priorities, challenge assumptions, and build confidence in their decision making. And the research really backs this up. Organizations are calling for leaders who are adaptable, emotionally intelligent, and human centered because those leaders create trust, engagement, and performance.
What do you wish leaders understood earlier about the tensions they face as their responsibility grows? Because, their new leaders come online every day. And what would be a good cheat sheet that you would give them if they could, get up to speed a little bit more quickly as they make that transition?
I really wish leaders understood that feeling tension doesn't mean you're failing. Feeling that tension actually means you're leading. It's a natural feeling. And as responsibility grows, clarity often decreases. And that's normal, especially at this time. Leadership maturity isn't about certainty, it's about choice. And learning how to hold competing truths at the same time results in relationships, urgency, and patience. That is the work of leadership.
We love to mechanize the thoughts and ideas on the Leader Chat podcast. So another one, if leaders are listening today, are feeling stretched or conflicted, what's one reminder that you want them to hold on to?
You don't have to get it perfect. You have to be intentional, but you don't have to get it perfect. Leaders today are balancing people and performance and the pressure to keep pace with customers and constant change. And you don't have to choose one. Pay attention to what your people need. Stay connected to why the work matters and give yourself permission to lead with both clarity and care because the tension doesn't go away, but your ability to navigate it absolutely gets better.
Debbie, if our listeners could just take one idea away from our conversation today and from your experience, what's that one thing you'd want them to really focus on, think about, and use going forward?
I think this thought of you don't feel like you have to get it just right, because I think so often leaders feel like I have to do it this way, and I need to have my people feel this way about it. And if something goes amiss, they beat themselves up a lot. And so it's, give yourself grace and, just be intentional about what you are trying to accomplish, and just know that it's not a choice of either or, but you can hold all those tensions simultaneously, and just don't feel like you have to get it just right.
Great advice. If people want to continue this conversation, Debbie, where can people find you?
Find me on LinkedIn, message me if you want to continue the conversation. I'd love to hear from you.
Debbie Young, president of Blanchard. Thank you so much for being a part of this episode of the Blanchard Leader Chat podcast. Been a great conversation.
Thanks, Chad.
And thank you for joining us for today's podcast. If you enjoyed the interview, go ahead and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts, and please share it with your friends. The best way you can help us grow is feedback. So write a review if you haven't already. This podcast is brought to you by Blanchard, the heart of human achievement. Visit Blanchard.com for additional resources to help you and your organization succeed.